I was always the kind of person who liked to play it safe, who stuck to what felt comfortable and familiar. But then my friend, someone I considered to be close, said something that completely changed my perspective. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, You're not cut out for running your own store. It's a lot of work. You won't make it." At first, I tried to brush it off. It was just one person's opinion, right? But deep down, those words started to fester. Why did they affect me so much? Was she right? Was I really not cut out for it? It wasn't the first time someone had questioned my dreams, but this one felt different. This was someone who knew me well, someone whose opinion I valued. I thought about it constantly. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like I needed to prove her wrong. I needed to show her and myself that I was capable of much more than what she thought. I'd always dreamed of owning my own store. The idea of running something that was mine, creating a space that people would love to visit, and being my own boss was something I had thought about for years. But self-doubt was a constant companion. I questioned whether I had what it took. Could I handle the stress of managing a business? Would people even want to shop at my store? The uncertainties were endless. But hearing my friend say those words hit differently. I wasn't just dreaming anymore. I was motivated to prove that I could do it. I wasn't going to let someone else dictate what I could and couldn't achieve. Her words became the spark that ignited something inside of me. It was time to stop waiting for the perfect moment, to stop letting fear and doubt keep me stuck. I had to take action. I couldn't let this opportunity slip away because I was afraid. I was ready to prove everyone wrong, especially myself. I spent the next few days thinking about what I needed to do. I started researching, reading everything I could about starting a store, what it takes, how to handle the finances, how to market it. I spoke with people who had done it, who had been through the ups and downs. The more I learned, the clearer it became. I could do this, but then, of course, came the fear. It was one thing to dream about opening a store, but the reality was terrifying. The stakes were high, and I knew there was a chance I could fail. I could lose everything: money, time, energy, and all for what? A pipe dream? The idea of failing was so overwhelming that I almost convinced myself to back down. I started second-guessing myself. Was I making a huge mistake? Maybe my friend was right. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this after all. There were so many reasons to turn back, so many doubts swirling in my mind. But then I realized something important. The fear I was feeling wasn't a sign that I should give up. It was a sign that I was on the verge of something big. If I could face that fear, if I could push through it, I would be on my way to achieving something extraordinary. I knew that if I didn't take that leap now, I would regret it for the rest of my life. I couldn't live with the what ifs. What if I never tried? What if I let fear keep me from doing something that could change my life? I didn't want to look back one day and think, I wish I had taken the risk. So I pushed past the fear, embraced the uncertainty, and decided to move forward. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was going to be worth it. I found myself standing in front of the space that would soon become my first store, and I could feel my heart racing. I had signed the lease, I had made the commitment, and now it was time to bring my vision to life. The anxiety was real, but the excitement was even stronger. This was my chance. I remember the first time I walked into the empty space, just a few days before the grand opening. It felt surreal. The walls were bare and the floor was cold. Everything was just potential. I had so much work ahead of me. The clock was ticking, and every decision felt like it could make or break me. There was no turning back now, but what kept me going was the thought of proving everyone wrong, showing them, especially my friend, that I could do this. I was capable. I was ready. Opening that first store wasn't just about putting up shelves and stocking products. It was about challenging everything I thought I knew about myself. It was about stepping into a whole new version of myself, one who was brave enough to take risks, to face the unknown, and to trust that I could handle whatever came my way. As the store slowly took shape, I found that the real challenge wasn't just about the logistics. It was about overcoming the internal battles, the fears, the doubts, the questions. But every step I took, every decision I made brought me closer to the version of myself I wanted to be. And slowly, the doubt started to fade. Then came the first wave of reality, the setbacks. Running a store wasn't as glamorous as I thought. There were days when I wondered if it was all worth it. There were times when I questioned myself, feeling like I had bitten off more than I could chew, but just when I was about to give up, just when the weight of it all seemed too much to bear, I realized something. The fear wasn't going away, it never would. But if I let it control me, I'd never get anywhere. So I took a deep breath, pushed through, and kept moving forward. Opening that first store was a monumental step, but it wasn't enough. I knew I had to keep going to push myself even further. If I could open one store, why couldn't I open more? The question haunted me, and as the days went on, I started to formulate a plan. 3 stores in 1 month, why not? I had nothing to lose and everything to prove. I had no idea what I was getting into when I signed that lease. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. It was mine. The fear was overwhelming, but I was determined not to let it stop me. The first step was to get the space ready. I had this vision in my mind of what the store would look like, bright, inviting, and filled with products that spoke to people. But seeing the empty space in front of me felt completely different than what I had imagined. There were bare walls, an unfinished floor, and nothing but potential. My stomach twisted in knots, and I was struck by the enormity of what I had just committed to. I didn't have a huge budget. I had just enough to cover the bare essentials, shelving, some inventory, and a few basic decorations. I spent every waking moment running around, trying to make sure everything was in place before the opening. I couldn't afford to hire anyone for the construction or setup, so I did it all myself. From painting the walls to assembling the shelves to arranging the products, I had to wear every hat. It was exhausting physically, mentally, and emotionally. I had no experience in running a store, let alone setting one up from the ground up. I was learning as I went along, constantly Googling things and asking anyone I could for advice. And then came the next wave of panic. What if no one came? What if all this effort, all this money, all this time went to waste? I questioned every decision I had made, and it was hard not to doubt myself. But I knew that the only way I was going to succeed was to keep going. I couldn't let fear stop me now. Not when I was so close to making this dream a reality. Opening day arrived and the nerves were at their peak. I barely slept the night before, replaying everything in my head. Would the store be ready in time? Would customers even walk in? I had worked so hard, but it still didn't feel real. I remember standing outside just before the doors opened, staring at the empty sidewalk. I took a deep breath, calmed my racing heart, and reminded myself why I was doing this. I wasn't just opening a store. I was proving to myself, to my friend, and to everyone who had ever doubted me that I could do this. The first customers trickled in, and I was terrified. I was the one who had to greet them, help them, make them feel welcome. I had no sales experience. What if I said the wrong thing? What if I couldn't answer their questions? I was constantly second-guessing myself, but then something amazing happened. People started to like the store. They started to ask questions, to interact with me. And even though I was still unsure of myself, I realized that people were responding to my passion. They could see that I cared about the store, that I wanted it to succeed, and little by little, that gave me confidence. But confidence wasn't enough. There was still so much to learn. The first few weeks were a blur, dealing with suppliers, managing inventory, figuring out how to price things, and keeping the store looking fresh and inviting. I was still juggling every role from the cashier to the inventory manager to the marketer. It was overwhelming, but I kept pushing forward because I knew that each day was a step closer to getting it right. Then came the next challenge, the unexpected setbacks. The plumbing broke, the heating system malfunctioned, and I found out that some of the products I had ordered were delayed. Every time I thought I had everything under control, something else would pop up to remind me that I was in way over my head, but each time something went wrong, I refused to let it break me. I found solutions, I called the repairman, I scrambled to find temporary fixes. The stress was almost unbearable, but I learned the art of problem solving in real time. I had to be quick, resourceful, and calm under pressure. There was no other choice. And through it all, I kept reminding myself that this was my chance. The fear of failure didn't disappear, but it became something I could manage. Every mistake I made was a lesson, and every small victory was a step forward. I was learning, growing, and adapting to what was an entirely new world for me. I also realized that I had underestimated how much work running a store would be. I spent countless hours behind the counter trying to keep the store running smoothly, keeping the shelves stocked, and ensuring that customers had the best experience possible. And still, there was no guarantee of success. I had no idea if the store would make it through the first month, let alone the first year. But something within me refused to give up. What kept me going was the small moments of validation, the customer who came in and complimented the store, the regulars who returned week after week, the small sales that added up to big wins. And then there were the nights when I was alone, locking up, and I would take a moment to just look around the store. It was mine. I had built it from nothing. I had created something tangible out of a dream, and that was worth every sleepless night, every setback, and every moment of doubt. But I didn't stop there. I realized that if I could open one store, I could open more. I wasn't content with just proving that I could make it in business. I wanted to push myself even further. If I had done it once, I could do it again. And this time, I had a plan. I was going to open 3 stores in 1 month. I wasn't just going to build a business, I was going to build an empire. The challenge of opening multiple stores in such a short time seemed impossible, but the more I thought about it, the more it became clear to me that this was my chance to really show what I was capable of. If I could manage 3 stores, I would not only prove everyone wrong, but I would prove to myself that I was truly cut out for this. I wasn't going to stop at 1. 3 stores in 1 month would be the next step in proving that I had what it took to succeed in this business world. I remember the moment I decided to open 3 stores in 1 month. It felt like a crazy idea at first, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Why not push myself to the limit? Why not take this to a whole new level? I had already stepped out of my comfort zone by opening the first store, and I had managed to keep it running, so why stop there? I didn't want to settle for one success. I wanted more, and I wanted it fast. There was no time to waste. The first step was figuring out how I could possibly manage this. I knew that opening 1 store had nearly consumed all of my time, energy, and focus, so the idea of opening 3 in such a short period seemed insane. But that insanity fueled me. I started planning everything down to the smallest detail. I mapped out the locations, figured out the costs, and began to contact suppliers and contractors. I needed everything to fall into place quickly, and I knew that if I didn't stay organized, I would get overwhelmed. I wasn't working alone anymore. I had a small team of people who were helping me with the day-to-day tasks of running the first store, but now I needed to expand that team. I began hiring more staff, finding people who could handle everything from inventory management to customer service. I had to trust that they would help me bring these new stores to life. It was terrifying. The more people I brought on, the more responsibility I had to shoulder. It wasn't just my success anymore, it was theirs too. If anything went wrong, it wasn't just my reputation on the line. But I couldn't let fear paralyze me. If I wanted to succeed, I had to trust my instincts and trust the people I was bringing in. The logistics were overwhelming. I was juggling everything: hiring, ordering products, dealing with suppliers, making sure that the construction on the new locations was on schedule, and ensuring that my first store was still running smoothly. Every minute of every day felt like it was slipping through my fingers. I had to learn how to delegate, and I had to do it fast. I found that I couldn't do everything myself. I had to let go of some control and trust that my team could handle things. That was one of the hardest parts, the fear that something would fall through the cracks, that I'd miss an important detail that would cause everything to fall apart. But something unexpected happened as I worked through the chaos. I began to feel a sense of empowerment that I hadn't felt before. Each decision I made, each problem I solved, added another layer of confidence. It was as if I was finally stepping into the role I had always imagined myself in. I had started as someone with no real experience, someone unsure of what the future would hold, and now I was becoming a leader. I was learning what it meant to balance ambition with reality. There were still moments of doubt, still moments where I thought I was in way over my head, but those moments were becoming fewer. Every time I made progress, every time a new store opened, the doubt started to recede, replaced by an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. But even as things started falling into place, I couldn't ignore the pressure. The clock was ticking, and I had 3 stores to open in the span of a month. I knew I was pushing myself to the limit, but I was also pushing my team. They were working tirelessly to meet the deadlines I had set, and I could feel the strain. Sometimes I'd look around and see the exhaustion on their faces, and I'd wonder if I was asking too much of them. But then I remembered why I was doing this. I had to succeed, not just for me, but for everyone who had believed in me. And I knew that if we made it through this challenge, we would be stronger, more resilient, and ready for anything. The opening days were a whirlwind. Every new store brought with it a fresh set of challenges, but also new excitement. The first time we opened the doors to each of the new locations, it was surreal. I was there, surrounded by my team, watching customers trickle in, just like the first store. The feeling of people walking through the doors, exploring the space, interacting with the products, there was nothing like it. It felt like the beginning of something huge, and it was hard to wrap my mind around how far I had come in such a short amount of time. What was once a dream had now become a reality. But the reality was also demanding, and I was learning that running 3 stores wasn't easy. There were problems that I couldn't have anticipated. Some products were out of stock, and we had to scramble to get more. One of the stores had a plumbing issue on the very first day of business. The second store wasn't bringing in as many customers as we had hoped. Every time something went wrong, it felt like I had failed, but then I reminded myself failure was part of the process. Each problem, each challenge was a lesson. I didn't have time to dwell on mistakes. I had to solve them quickly and move on. The pressure was constant, but I refused to let it crush me. And through it all, I kept thinking back to what my friend had said. You're not cut out for this. Those words had haunted me, but they had also driven me. Every time something went wrong, every time I felt overwhelmed, I thought about how I was proving her wrong. I wasn't just running one store, I was managing 3, and I was doing it well. The hard work, the sleepless nights, the endless decisions, it was all worth it. But the best part came when I started to see the fruits of my labor. It wasn't just about proving people wrong anymore, it was about building something sustainable. The stores started to find their rhythm, the sales were growing, the customers were coming back, and my team was beginning to feel the satisfaction of seeing their hard work pay off. I realized that I wasn't just proving something to other people, I was proving to myself that I was capable of more than I ever thought possible. And when all 3 stores were up and running, when I could finally take a moment to breathe, I was overwhelmed with a sense of pride. I had done it. Not only had I opened 3 stores in 1 month, but I had managed to make each one successful. It wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I had taken the risk, faced the fear, and come out stronger on the other side. The person who had walked into that first store unsure and filled with doubt was no longer the same person. I had grown. And the best part was, I was just getting started. The success of opening 3 stores in 1 month was more than just a victory over my friend's doubt. It was a personal triumph that redefined everything I believed was possible. But what came next was a whole new set of challenges, ones that I had barely anticipated. I had crossed the first hurdle, but now the real work began. Maintaining success, scaling the business, and ensuring that I was not just a one-hit wonder were the hurdles that kept me awake at night. The weight of it all hit me hard. For the first time since I had started, I felt like I was standing on a precipice, looking out at the vast unknown, not knowing where the next step would take me. After the stores were up and running, the excitement started to settle into the routine. I'd always wanted to build something that was more than just a temporary project, but the reality of sustaining it was far from simple. The adrenaline rush of opening the doors and seeing customers walk in was beginning to wear off. I was now dealing with the business side of things, managing the financials, the inventory, the customer service, and most importantly, my team. Each store had its own set of unique challenges, and my time was now divided between them. I quickly realized that my initial approach had been driven by pure ambition and urgency. While that had gotten me to where I was, it wasn't enough to ensure long-term success. I had to start thinking about the bigger picture. I needed systems in place, processes that were efficient and scalable. The idea of winging it had worked to get me through the first few weeks, but it wouldn't carry me much further. If I wanted to expand even more, I had to start laying down the foundation for sustainable growth. I began to put more effort into the management side of things. I hired an operations manager to help with day-to-day tasks, someone who could handle the things I had no time for. It was hard for me to let go of control, but I knew it was necessary. As much as I wanted to be involved in every decision, I couldn't do it all anymore. I had to trust others with the responsibility, and in doing so, I learned an important lesson. Delegating was just as crucial to success as the initial hustle. I couldn't grow if I didn't allow others to help carry the load. But even with my new team and better systems in place, I still felt like I was constantly walking on a tightrope. Every decision I made carried weight. Every move I made was scrutinized. There were days when I would be physically exhausted but mentally wired, unable to sleep, thinking about all the things that still needed to be done. There were sleepless nights spent checking sales reports, running over budgets, planning promotions, and thinking about what the next move should be. The work never stopped, and neither did the fear that something might go wrong. There were moments when I felt like a fraud, like I didn't truly belong in this world of business owners, entrepreneurs, and CEOs. I would look at my competitors, some of whom had years of experience, and I'd wonder if I had what it took to compete on that level. I was still so new to all of this, still figuring out the complexities of cash flow, profit margins, and how to scale effectively. But despite those moments of self-doubt, I pushed forward because I knew that the only way to truly fail was to quit, and quitting was never an option. The first major turning point came when I realized that I couldn't keep running these stores the way I had been. I was burning out. My team was burning out, I had to become a better leader, and to do that, I had to change my mindset. I needed to think beyond just the immediate success. I had to shift from being a worker to being a true business owner, someone who set a vision and inspired others to follow it. This wasn't just about building a business, it was about creating a legacy. I began to prioritize developing my leadership skills, learning how to communicate effectively with my team, and how to build a culture that motivated everyone to give their best. It was about getting to the heart of why people would want to work for me, not just for the paycheck, but because they believed in what I was building. One of the hardest parts of that shift was learning to be okay with imperfection. I had set such high standards for myself and for the business that it was difficult to accept that things weren't always going to go according to plan. There were days when sales didn't meet expectations or when customers were unhappy with the service. Those days were hard to stomach. But I learned that mistakes were just part of the process. What mattered was how quickly I could learn from them and adjust. And that's exactly what I did. Each setback taught me more about the kind of leader I wanted to be and how I could continue to evolve in my business. Despite the challenges, the rewards began to show. I started to see the impact of my decisions. My stores weren't just places where people bought things, they were becoming community hubs. I had regular customers who came in just to chat, just to experience the atmosphere I had worked so hard to create. I started receiving feedback that made me realize the business wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the people who had believed in me, who had trusted me enough to support my vision. Their loyalty, their belief in the store was the foundation upon which everything had been built. There were moments when I had to stop and remind myself of how far I had come. There were so many people who had doubted me, people who thought I wasn't capable of running even a single store. And now, here I was, running 3 stores with a growing team and a solid customer base. I had proved them wrong in the best way possible, not just by opening stores, but by building something that was thriving. I had taken those words, you can't do it, and turned them into fuel for my success. Each store wasn't just a business, it was a statement, a declaration that I could do whatever I set my mind to. As I started thinking about the future, I realized that I wasn't finished yet. There was more I wanted to do, more I wanted to achieve. 3 stores weren't enough. I had bigger goals now, and I was more prepared than ever to tackle them. But this time, it wasn't just about proving something to others, it was about proving it to myself. I had come so far, and I wasn't stopping here. The journey had only just begun, and the future was wide open, waiting for me to take it.